What's going on, Lapeef family? Welcome to Sage Talk on the Lapeef Network. Appreciate you guys for tuning in today. It's going to be a great show as usual. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys hit the like button and then also make sure you subscribe to the network. Let me see who we got in the chat already. What's going on, Real? I see you in the chat. Appreciate you, brother. Cam, I see you. Salute to you guys. Aaron B, I see you. Moz, make sure you guys continue to moderate the chat, please. And with all due, let me bring up the man himself. Oh, before I do that, shout out to the sponsor, Tej Hanley. Shout out to Tej Hanley. That link is posted at the top of the chat right there. So make sure you guys click that link to get yourself your free gift. Now let me introduce Mr. Lee. What's going on, Mr. Lee? How you doing? Oh, let me take you off mute. There you go. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Good afternoon.
Man, it's good
How's
to be.
everybody in the chat?
I think everybody in the chat is good, man. Everybody that's watching is good. I think they're ready for the show. Our apologies. We have to get everything situated before to make sure that this show is what it's supposed to be, which is great. There you go, 404 Tyler. I see you, Phil Teach. Well, Mr. Lee, man, you had a great show. If you guys missed it, you might want to go back. Just put Sage Talk in the search on the Lapeef Network, and you'll see two episodes that come up. This series that we're going to do is part three. But last week, man, I found out some interesting things. It caught me by surprise, I must say, Lee. It did. And I'm pretty sure it caught somebody else. But it was definitely a great show, man. I love what you're doing. I can't wait to see what you got for us today. I have no clue, well, a little bit of a clue, but I don't know what you're going to dive into. So, can you give the guys a brief description as to what we're going to be seeing in a moment?
Okay, well, actually, today's show, I want to try to bring a culmination of touch on the part one, part two, and part three. Most of what I'm going to be speaking about today has to do, obviously, with the summation or the culmination of the conversation that started several weeks ago with King Talk, based on the topic power, influence, and charisma. And I want to pivot off that because to really become a man of power, it's going to take a lot of self work. Last week, we talked about self control. We talking about living without boundaries. And we talking about living a life with ethics and morals and having a standard. This week, I really want to go into how do we see one another as brothers? Can black men lead? And more importantly, leadership basically coming from the power of oneself, which begins within. So that's where I want to take the conversation. Let's get into it. You're on mute, Jero.
I said all of that. I hate when that happens. But I see you trying to get me to boot off. I know that's my cue. I heard the aggression in your tone. You said let's hop right into it. So, man, I'm gonna let you do your thing, man. Make sure you guys get the likes up if you haven't already. Towards the end of the show, we'll be taking calls. So just make sure you guys look out for that link. If you call in, make sure that you are respectful. You are on cam the entire time. Yeah, man, let's hop right into it. The floor is yours, sir.
All right, thank you. Throw those images up in the background. Truly appreciate it. So I want to get into this conversation about love or hate and what that really means. And how am I looking to address this whole issue of love or hate? And how does it weave into Black men and leadership? The first thing I'd like to say is, as Black men, how do we see one another? What do we think of when we look at ourselves? And my question is, are you worthy? Are you worthy? I don't have the answer to that question. The question, the answer to that question Only you know that. However, we've talked about self determination in America. We've talked about reparations in America. We've talked about some form of coming together in America. My question is, are we capable of ruling? What would reparations look like? Is reparations just money, or is reparations something greater? Does the black man have the ability to take total control of his destiny, to determine what he will be as we go forward in this new land that we call America, where we were birthed first coming from kings to slave, and then are we going to become kings again? Do we have it within us to become men of power, men who can rule over nations? These are some of the things I'd like us to consider as black men. And what would it take for us to accomplish that? Is brotherly love something we can truly express one to another? Earlier this week on Tuesday, I was on King Talk, and a brother had called in and he was talking about love. So I posed the question to him: is love a verb or is love a noun? And the reason I posed that question to that individual, but to the greater audience at large, is that most people think love is a noun. It's just a thing, it's out there, and everybody got it. But I beg to differ. I think love is a verb. I think it's something that you must do every day to prove itself. When you get up in the morning, when you look into the mirror, do you love the image you see back? Do you see the beast on the right, or do you see the brother on the left? What do you see? When you look at your children, your sons, your daughters, when you look at your wife, your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, what do you see? Do you love that image that you see? And what actions can you say within yourself that you demonstrate daily that they may know you love them? Or do you just assume because it's a word and many people call it a noun that it exists? So therefore, I love you because I exist. No, I think love must be demonstrated. Love must be shown. When you have a conversation with another brother and you find yourself in disagreement, how do you show love in that conversation? Do you take it to the next level to prove that you're a man? Do you pull out the tule and you end the conversation? Or do you take low and say, you know what, brother? I'm not sure if my point of view is correct, even if you know what you're saying is absolutely right. Let me think about that. You have a point. Do you demonstrate love to your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, and those around you like yourself? Or must you always be the man with the power? And the only power you have is within yourself because no one else knows that you have it. We have to become men of power. And how do we do that? The first thing I think we must overcome is to overcome the programming of hate. How do we work together? How do we learn how to look at ourselves and those who look like us and not automatically act out on our emotions when we have a difference of opinion, difference of ideas, difference of beliefs? Because no two black men are the same. We have many differences. Many of us come from broken families. And to be honest, so what? Who gives an ish? Your excuses are your own. These are our problems, and we must solve them. They are personal problems, and you know what? No one cares. Not a single person cares. For us to truly be able to be united, to take control of our destiny, our future, we must do one thing. We must seek power through leadership. And for us to be able to lead, we must be able to unify. That's a must. That's not an if. It's not a want. It's not a desire. It's a must. Now, I'm no Dr. Martin Luther King or nothing like that. I'm not a Malcolm X. I wouldn't consider myself studied on that level. But I do know one thing. We have a fight, and this fight is an individual fight. It's a fight that I have every day. It's a fight that you have every day. And that fight is to overcome the programming that has been put upon us for so many centuries, and more sophisticatedly in the past 50, 60 years, between media, between government, between politics, between business, between society, even the use of our children and our women against us. Regardless, the only way we're going to rise above it all is for us to look at each other as individuals and fix the problem within us, that we can unite and see each other as brothers at arms in the same battle. And the battle is for self determination. And self determination does not mean living under another authority. Self determination means wielding our own authority under our own governance, with our own property and our own lands, whether that's parts of America or somewhere else. In time, that will present itself. Now, I know this conversation is not going to be something that every black man will hear. They may hear the words, but they're not going to understand. Because, like Kevin Samuel says, he's only talking to 10% of men, those who want to be in that number, those high value men. Likewise, this conversation is not for every black man. I'm only talking to possibly 1 to 5% of you. Because, in all honesty, to become a leader, a man of power, takes a unique kind of individual. It surpasses money. Money is part of it, but money is not the only part. And sometimes it's not even the primary part. And I'm not trying to insult anyone. Please don't get me wrong. That is not my intent. But I must say this. Do you talk about ruling in the United States? When you're hanging out with your homies, what do you talk about? Sports? Females? Crypto? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong and I missed it. But I know this, the things that you talk about, the things that envelops your consciousness shapes your ideas and the things that you do. I'm not talking to every black man, nor am I talking to any one particular black man, but I'm speaking to black men of like-mindedness. Black men who, in their most private places, think about rulership in America. Black men who wants power. Black men who are not afraid. It's time for us to think about the Western powers, not just in America, but in England, in Europe, in Australia, all around the world. Because when they meet in Davos, in Switzerland, when the G8 and the G20 nations meet, they think about us. They make plans to make sure for the next 100 years, we will never see power. They plan to make sure we never unite. Are we making plans to overthrow theirs? The one fear that white people have is black unity. If black men was to become united, if black men were to become united, it will change the face of this earth. And that's what white people fear every day, from the poorest white man to the richest, most powerful white man. So I ask the question, can black men lead? In my past experience, I've noticed how black men lead. Most of the times, black men lead by anger, aggression, physical intimidation, and sometimes outright violence. Now, that does work, but is limited. Much like physical labor, it has its limitations. Now, leadership is a skill that can be taught. So every man have the capacity to become a leader, but does every man possess the will? So one of the things I want to discuss, because I notice something that I see a lot on different conversations. Do good leaders argue? I have a question for the chat. Do good leaders argue? Arguing amongst one another most of the time is a fruitless effort. And arguing with with women, never looks good. I've observed so many different arguments between men and women, and it irks my spirit because, arguing with a woman is like a guy having a fight with a gay guy. That's a lose lose situation. If you beat up a gay guy, you get no brownie points there. You just beat up a gay guy. But if you lose to a gay guy, shh, you got your ass whipped by a gay guy. That's a double negative. I mean, who will have respect for you again? You could never really show yourself as a masculine man or a man of leader or of a leadership abilities in any community. You lose to a gay guy, your reputation is done. So arguing with women is a fruitless activity. When you talk with women, if you have disagreement, you state your facts, you state your opinions once, twice, if need be, depending on how you might think about the situation, 3 times. After that, leave it alone. The reason why, there is no end in arguing with a woman. It's a fool's domain because in the end, a woman can always change her mind and the situation and the reason behind whatever you argue about will change. So it's like going down a rabbit hole. It just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And to what end? Not to any conclusion. So arguing from a leadership perspective between men, it should be some form of a debate based on principles and ideas. With women, a man should always take a leadership role. You can have a conversation or you can have a discussion. But wherever emotions comes into the game, you have to understand the emotion is not where men rule. When men deal with emotions, men should deal with emotions from the level of self-control, meaning the ability to not allow others to manipulate you proactively to make you do something you do not want. Now, I will say this, coming into the latter point of this discussion, leadership is a state of mind. You know, one of the things that I hear about, and I didn't touch on in the first part of this series, was perfection. I hear many people like to use the term nobody is perfect. And I've listened to that statement so many times. And I beg to differ with that. There are people who are perfect. I can think back in the Bible and I know God has mentioned that there are two men, well, at least one from the Old Testament and one from the New Testament that I can think of off the top of my head. But in time, I can go back and find more because I've read that there were more. But Abraham was a man that the Lord said, not only is he perfect, he said, Abraham is my friend. And in the book of Luke, in the New Testament, Zacharias, the father of John the Baptist, he said he was a perfect man in every way. So, what is perfection? That should be the question then. What is perfection? Because when people say you are not perfect, what are they really saying? Allow me to be mediocre and please don't judge me. Don't hold me to a higher standard. Let me be a lesser person. That's what they're really saying. Don't hold me to be better than I can be because I'm lazy. I don't like change. I'm undisciplined and I lack focus. Mediocrity is what most people like in terms of how they live their life. Earlier this week, I believe I listened to a brief talk on Phil from African diaspora. And he cited a report that came out recently that Black people are the most religious people in the United States, if not the world. And in the book of the Bible, the standard for perfection in God's eyes, he said, keep my commandments. That will make you perfect. In the New Testament, Paul says, I believe, citing a reference to Christ, he said, think it not robbery to be equal unto God. So what is he saying? You want to be like God? Do what he say. See, I think we get confused between perfection as a standard and making mistakes. People make mistakes all the time. Mistakes is how you grow. That's how the mind is wired to improve. People who don't make mistakes don't grow. They stay the same. That's why they stay in the community. They stay in their neighborhood. They never leave their block. They never traveling outside of the United States. Lord forbid, get a passport. Oh my God, how dare you? People that think so small remain small. Those are people that want a mediocre life. Leaders don't think that way. Leaders know that you need to broaden your experiences. Leaders know that you're going to make mistakes as you climb the ladder to achieve great things because achieving great things require many losses, many mistakes. When a person wins, they never go back and evaluate why they won. It's when you lose. That's when you go back and you look at the videotapes. What did you do wrong? What you should have done here instead of that. So losing is how you improve yourself. Losing is how you become better. Mistakes is how you improve upon what you didn't know before. It's like if any of you may have young children or have had a niece or a nephew if you have no children, and in their first year and a half to 2 years, as they learn how to walk, it's the most amazing thing to watch when a child is learning how to walk. They stand up and you see how they grip their toes to find the ligaments to balance themselves. And they fall back on their butt. And as they learn to stand, then you see how they rock back and forth to try to center their spine over their heel. And then as they start to walk, they run real fast until they run into something and they stop, or they fall and they get back up. That's how the brain trains to learn how to walk, to teach the body certain things. But if you ever watch National Geographic and you see how maybe a water buffalo is born, When a water buffalo comes out of its mother, within a minute it's standing, and within 2 minutes it's running with the herd, with other grown animals. So would that make, compared to a child, a human, compare a water buffalo calf, would that be a more perfect being than us? Because it doesn't necessarily need to learn how to walk. It's programmed into its instincts to be able to walk from birth. Why? Its very survival is necessary. So I think we have to understand what perfection is all about, because perfection is how you become better as a man. Perfection is how you hold yourself to a higher standard. Perfection is how you reach heights to achieve the things that you never thought were possible. There's always going to be those who tell you that you cannot. I'll say this: if you don't know who the people are around you that want you to succeed or would stop you from succeeding, think about whenever you wanted to do something to better yourself. They are the dissenters. They're the ones that are telling you you can't do that, but they never tell you what you can do. There's always a person right now that does not want you to be better. You need to find out who that is and get rid of him, because the company that you keep will be the limitations of your achievements and your successes. If you hang around with princes and kings, you'll become a noble. If you hang around with bums and peasants, you'll become homeless. Everybody do what's comfortable, what's regular for them, what's normal. Like I said in previous shows, show me your habits and I'll show you who you are. I'll say this: you want to change your life? Change your habits. You want to become better? It takes 21 days to break a habit. It takes 30 days to form a new habit. Within 60 days, you can make a change in yourself. Think about the one thing that is most destructive to your life right now, and don't do it for 21 days. And then think about how you can be better as a person and do that for 30 days. Flip a habit. The best way to get rid of a habit, a bad habit, is to replace it with a new habit. And within 60 days, you will see the change within yourself. In summation, I'd like to say this: the series about Black men taking power really begins within you. So, what happens next? I don't know. But I will say this: if you want to change, there's no one that can stop you but you. If you want to be better, there's no one that can stop you but you. Stop listening to the voices beginning within your head that tells you that you can't, and then broaden that circle to the people around you, whether it's family, whether it's your spouse, whether it's friends, colleagues at work. If they don't believe in you, you need to remove them far away from you as you possibly can. Last week, I talked about living a life without boundaries, living a life by a code of conduct, having morals and ethical principles, having standards by which you will live. I also mentioned an action step, to make a pledge that you will, from this day forward, starting January 15th, when that show first aired, but whenever you listen to it, as a man, set a new standard for yourself, become better. As a pledge, never to sleep with another man's wife. Now, some people might think that has no value, but I will say this: it will reduce violence within the Black community between Black men significantly, regardless of what a woman will do, what a woman will think, what a woman will want. My conversations is geared towards men. I'm not here to talk down to women. There are many other men that are doing that conversation. I'm not here to tell you how bad women are or how great women are, what they can and cannot do. My focus is really on is how can black men be better? How can black men begin to take leadership in business, in politics, or whatever field they choose for themselves? And one of the last things we talked about last week was self control, not allowing your appetites, our urges, our desires to control our behaviors, our whims, your emotions, whether it be our pleasures in drink, our pleasures in drugs, our pleasures with women, our pleasures with food. A man that learns the mastery of himself is a dangerous man because he has no weakness. He cannot be controlled. He controls his environment around him and the people around him. And people fear a man like that, starting with your family. That's who will fear you most. They will say, who do you think you are? We know you when you used to do this, that, and the other. Christ says the same thing. A prophet is least known in his hometown and the people that knows him because they know your faults. And because they know your faults, they think you cannot change. I beg to differ. Any man and every man can change and become better. And the last part I want to talk about is part one we briefly discussed in the first session. What makes a good leader? There were 5 or 6 things that I cited, and I just want to review it. Effectiveness. Effectiveness is about how you do things, and part of it is how you use time. How effective are you accomplishing the things that you need to do within the time you have to do it in? Decisiveness. How decisive are you in issuing commands over yourself and others who you have rulership over? Taking responsibility for the things that fail because no one is right 100% of the time, or else you have nothing to learn. How do you take responsibility when your decisions give you a different results than you anticipated? Your ability to resolve conflict. Are you a man that resolve controversy or are you a man that start controversy? What kind of man are you? Integrity. Are you a man of integrity? Can someone look at you and say, you know what? That's a man of principle. That's a man of sound character. He has standards and ethical principles that he lived by, and he doesn't allow alcohol, weed, friends, money, or women, sex, anything to move him off his square. Trustworthiness. Trustworthiness can only be gained through 3 things: dependability, reliability, and honesty. Those are the things that lays the foundation for you to be trusted. And any and every great leader must be trusted. And the last thing I would say is your ability to serve. If you want to become a good leader, you must learn how to serve. And if you want to be able to serve, you have to be selfless. You have to be able to do something for others without no expectations in return. And that's why I've suggested, you know, maybe volunteer your time somewhere, even if it's short term, 30 days, 60 days, twice a week, 3 hours a week, whatever. Just give of your time somewhere to some activity that there's no expectation of any physical reward. You'll be surprised how that will change your life and open up doors and opportunities to you. So, JR, if there are definitely people in the chat that would like to take this conversation further, I'm open to the discussion. I think this was a very powerful series. I look forward to whatever might comes next. But I will say this, as Black men in America, we are the most loved and the most hated at the same time. And most importantly, the most feared. We're feared by our own women, we're feared by each other, and we're feared by the larger society most, because the larger society knows if and when the day comes that we ever can put away our differences as Black men, put them to the side for the moment. There's a greater cause. If we can do that, power will naturally come into our hands because we are powerful men. We've always been. Even in our subjugation, we still if issue influences throughout the earth, even being criminalized, being drugged, being shot in the street, being having an image of us painted globally as violent men, yet we still rise to the top and provide leadership through influence. What if we were to come together in some way? And I'm not talking to everybody, but it doesn't take everybody to lead and to change time. It just takes enough to create a tipping point. And I put a challenge out to brothers that are of like mind, that frequent the Lapeef Network, that are here in the Black manosphere. They want to see Black men be better men and men who can achieve and men who can do and not just talk. Those are the men that I'm talking to today. So let's go ahead and have this conversation. Anyone have any questions? JR, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Lee. I dropped the
Okay,
link, so if you guys want to call in, make sure you guys call in. The link is dropped right now. Dropped it a few times. You got any questions? Feel free to call in.
sure. Well, if anyone have any specific questions they'd like to ask with regard to details, we can have that conversation as well. I didn't want to get into details because details are specific to individuals. So I don't know anyone's particular situation, but we can have that conversation also.
And it's been a great conversation, Lee. I like it.
Okay. Well, I think, as Black men, I think we really need to think bigger. I think a lot of times we're focused on the day to day survival,
Hmm.
making money. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's necessary. But I think, we're in a new century now. We're in the 21st century. This is going to be going into the second 100 years of our so called freedom in America. How long are we going to be fighting for the basics? When do we set our sights on something bigger? When do we start looking at the entire Black, not just community, but Black people as a nation in America? Because, I mean, it's not like we're going back to Africa. So we can, chuck that out the window. That's not going to happen. Individual people may take trips, some people may relocate, but as masses, we're not going to leave America and go set up shop someplace else. Unless unless that comes from the United Nations through some kind of reparations program of resettlement. But other than that, our home is America. So what are we going to do? How are we going to rise to the top to make ourselves a better people and stop always begging for the things that we want? Because we have the power to change our lives. We just have to change our minds in a united way. You were going to say something?
Yeah, we had a question that was in the chat. This is from Alton Blackham. The question is, what is the biggest cause of suicide in men?
Oh, the
In
biggest
your
cause
opinion?
of suicide in men. I really don't know what the biggest cause would be because I've never researched it. But from what I hear, one of the things that I think affects men most would be depression. And depression can come from many states. It can come from when a person feels as though they have no reason to live anymore. And that can happen for many, many ways. That can be in his financial world, the career he has chosen, things just aren't going right, a confluence of different things happening like dominoes, falling at the same time within his life. His relationship, he may have had several failed relationships, and he gets into another relationship with someone that he cares greatly about, and that relationship begins to fail. And then he may look upon himself feeling as though he is not a worthy man. And once you feel that you're not worthy, life becomes meaningless. And once life becomes meaningless, you don't see no purpose to continue. So that would be my response.
All right, we do got somebody. Cliff, I see you in the background. I'm gonna bring you up in 1 second. I think this might be a possible question. Yes. What do you think about moving from a place where you have established to go somewhere else for better opportunities?
Make the move. Don't hesitate.
Okay.
Change is good.
Good evening.
What's going on,
Hey,
Um,
Cliff?
good afternoon, Cliff. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I always wanna chime in on your show because it's good content, but my finger was kind of hovering over the button until that guy asked that question. What makes men, you know, do stupid things like suicide? So I opened up on this show on your Thursday night show a little bit back about what was going on in my life recently, and in in my relationship, like when it ended, I feel like I feel like I was maybe 80% dedicated to what I was doing. Most of my life or most of my career life I worked for people, been taken advantage of, and just in the past couple of years I've been seeing how that's been going on. And then, you know, I met the woman I thought was going to be my wife. We did things a little backwards. We didn't get married right away, even though I knew in my heart that I could see myself being with this woman for a long period of time. We had a kid, and I brought this up on the show before. Immediately after having my son, or when he was conceived and in the belly, like I started to question a lot of things in my life, man. Like, where am I going in my life? What type of example do I want to be for my son? How how I want other people to perceive me. And I feel like I started working towards that. But somewhere along the line, I kind of got lost because, again, the relationship, you know, and I take accountability for whatever happened too, because you can't just throw it all on one person.
For
But
sure.
I find like towards the end, I started questioning myself. I started questioning the type of person that I am, um things that I would do if it was necessarily the right person, if it was the right things that I was doing, if I was being selfish in doing those things. And it put me in a state, man, where I just got severely depressed. I even struggle with it a little bit every now and then.
Hmm.
uh But I remember one night, man, I was sitting at my desk and I think I was watching you guys' show or I was watching one of Anton's show, a recap. And I couldn't focus on what was going on. I it affected my work. Like I was trying to do work at the same time and I couldn't focus, man. And I do construction. I wear work pants where I have this little pocket on the side, and I usually keep like a stencil knife, a pencil, and a pen. And while I'm there, I'm in my thoughts. I look down in my hand and I got my stencil knife, man, and it's open. And I'm thinking about like, going and filling up the tub and just going taking a sit and just make a little tiny incision and just sit there. But then I have things like this on my desk. This is me and this is my son. This is the only thing that got me through those times. And even when because 4 years when you're with somebody for a while, you get attached to that person and you get used to certain things. And I started thinking about like you know I want this back. I want because I've been working so hard in my life to provide for my family. And I have something now. I didn't grow up with a dad. I don't want my son to grow up in a family where the mom and dad is separate and they're arguing all the time and they hate each other. I don't want that because I grew up in that, and I didn't have my dad in my life to teach me certain things, even though we do talk and we kind of have a relationship now. And a lot of the things that we talk about, like I'm like that. I remember one time I broke down and I was like, dad, I'm I really regret us not having a relationship when I was younger, because a lot of the things that we talk about now, if I had known those things in my teens, I'd be a far different person now. I'm sorry if I'm all over the place.
No, you're fine.
Okay. So
So let me,
I
go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, no, you can interject. I feel like
What I was going to say is, what were the things that triggered this series of thought? Was it the conception of your son that caused you to self-reflect, or was there something else that actually triggered that?
I would say it was largely in part to the conception of my son, because I I wanted to be not only in his life, but I wanted to be a positive example of of what you can be in life. I seen myself as the bar, right? I am supposed to show this young man that, this is who your dad is, and you're better than me. I should need to give you all the tools that you don't need to stay on this bar. You can take those tools and keep climbing up. So when I started thinking about that, and even in that, when I found out that I was gonna have a boy, like I felt like that was gonna be an opportunity for me to do something different from what I grew up in. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And I wanted to be a better person for him. I didn't want him to come and see his dad, just working in construction, working for somebody. I wanted to come and see his dad, own your own company. You're taking on jobs for yourself. And he can come to he has been to he absolutely loves it. This kid is 2. He comes to my jobs and there will be screws in the wall. I give him a drill and he knows how to put it in reverse. He backs out the screws and he puts it back and he puts it back in the wall. This kid can count from 1 to 100. This kid knows his alphabet. He can count in Spanish, Greek, and French from 1 to 10. He's a highly intelligent boy, and I don't feel like I need to give him some kind of mediocre example of what a man is. I need to be the best version of myself so he can know that, yo, you know, my dad is a great man and I can be greater because he gave me everything that I needed.
But the key is what you have to show him is stability. Without stability, he will have nothing. He will start from scratch. The one thing you can give him is to become a stable father, exemplifying. Today, you are in construction. 20 years from now, you can own your own construction company. But ownership doesn't come overnight.
Yes,
And I
I
think
understand.
sometimes we want things when we think of it. and we don't understand because we have not had the example set before us on how things are achieved and built. So what you need to do is to be focused on what it is that you're doing now, and then write out goals for yourself, 12-month intervals, 12 months, 24 months, 3 years, 5 years. What are the things that I want to accomplish? And then you map out uh, quarterly achievement goals that you should achieve every 3 months to meet your annual goals.
Hmm.
That will help you focus better to keep you on track, because I think you may be thinking about too many things, too many variables at the same time, and you can't seem to focus them to bring them into an action step. And when you can't find a place where you can be active, where you feel that you're on or know that you're on your purpose, you become chaotic in thinking. And then you start to think, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not worthy. I'm not a good example for my son. I need to be better, but for some reason, I'm not better. You start making long term evaluations in the present for things that won't happen until sometime in the future. And you start making judgments, and some people act upon those judgments. So, what I would say the first thing you want to do is to become a stability in your son's life. And how do you do that for yourself? I don't know. But if you have a good relationship with your son's mom, I think a place to start, if you guys can talk to try to work through the differences that you may have. It seems like you have a nice home there. If it's possible that you can get your the mother, if she's not your wife, or if she's your former wife and you guys haven't finalized the divorce, if you guys can work it out and she can come back. Because having a stable home for your son is going to be paramount. But if that is not possible, then be in his life as much as possible. Keep him around you. Get him for the weekends. Like you said, take him on site to jobs. Well, not to jobs, but maybe if you're doing things around the house. When he gets older, you can take him on site because job sites can be dangerous. I worked in
Yeah,
the
I more
nuclear.
mean like
Yeah,
house jobs, like
sure.
house.
Yeah. You don't want
I
him
get what
stepping on something that can puncture his foot and cause him to get hurt, right? But
yeah.
definitely, obviously, your son has become a pinnacle point of focus for you, and that's important. And I think that's a good thing. But what you don't want to do is create forms of self-evaluation that make you think that you're not capable or that you're less than. What you want to do is sit down and map out a 5-year goal: year one, year two, year three, year four, and year five. And then how are you going to get there? You have to start with year one. What do I need to do in the next 30 days to make sure I'm on the path? And then you do 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Okay, did I accomplish this in the 90-day period? If you didn't, then how much time is it going to take you to meet that goal that you should have achieved at 90 days? Do I need 30 days more? So I think what you need to do is, you know, uh, you need to set out bite-sized goals for yourself that you can achieve little by little. And over time, you'll realize that you have accomplished a lot by taking on bite-sized goal. But if you make a goal that is so huge, you become the goal become a mental abstract conversation within yourself to dissuade you from achieving it because it seems too big. You know, I was a teacher, I said earlier, for 8 years. And one of the things I used to do with my students, every new semester, I used to have my students set a goal. And they had to answer 5 questions at the beginning of the goal. And then they had to list 5 things at the end of the goal, what they learned from it. Was it enjoyable? And there were 5 different things that I always had them answer. They had to come before the class and demonstrate it. Some students wanted to learn how to dance. Some students wanted to learn how to cook certain things. Some students, the girls, they did hair, they did nails. Some students wanted to have improved grades in difficult subjects, math, uh, English, because it was a bilingual school, and so forth. But I did that to help them be inspired to see that they can do things that they may not normally do and is not required academically for the course. However, completing the goal, they got extra credit. So they always wanted to participate and do it because they know they can get extra credit that they can apply to their weakest class and get better grades. So I think that's something that you should definitely look at in terms of for yourself is to establish goals for yourself and then make them into bite-sized achievable hurdles that you can overcome and then every quarter, every 6 months, every year, do a review on yourself, see what goals you met, see where you fell short, and then for the next year, what you have to do the next year.
Good
That's how we
points.
accomplish the things that we need to accomplish. And I would say in terms of negative thoughts that may enter your mind, find a fun activity that you like to do, whatever that might be, whether it's playing video game or anything else. I don't know what young people do today, but for me, back in my day, I used to dance skate. I used to teach roller skating. I enjoyed roller skating. I can go roller skating and lose 5 pounds in a night. That's how intense I used to roller skate. You know what I mean? So that was something that I like, and I like running. I was used to run track when I was young for Hunter College, and even now, most days when the weather is good here, I would go. I do a 4 or 5 mile run. I go out and run for an hour and do 5 miles. I'll do that 3, 4 days a week, right? So it's a way to clear my mind, de-stress, and filter things through exercise, and it's healthy as well to take away the stress. So whatever it is that you enjoy, for me, it's running, but for you, it could be something else. Do something that can filter out negative thoughts.
For sure. Give thanks. I really appreciate your advice.
All right, Cliff, I'm going to kind of filter through these other two people, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
man.
Phil.
Really
Cliff.
advice.
Hey, by the way, Cliff, that's my
Yes, sir.
brother's name too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my brother's name.
Yeah, man. Respect to everybody. Give thanks, guys.
All
Thanks
right,
for
No
having me.
problem. Take
thanks.
care.
Big up, Mr. Lee.
All right, man. You take care too. Cliff, I think he dropped out, but Cliff, yeah, you take care, brother. And if you need anything, man, just reach out. I could be an ear any given time as well. So just make
Hey,
sure you reach out, and I have no problem having any type of conversations you want to have.
baby Zaddy, talk to me.
Hold on, real quick. I'm gonna shout this super chat out to Alicia. She said, "Women have talk shows, men take action, and stuff gets done." Shout out to Lapeef Jr. We appreciate you, Mr. Lee, and thank you, Alicia, for the super chat. I do have some questions, real quick. I'm gonna try to comb through it. At Baby Zaddy, do you mind if I filter through these questions real quick?
Yeah, sure, man. You the boss.
Okay. All right. I want to start off by saying Cam said that I want to see Lee host some sort of rites of passage. So just want to put that out there. Keep that in mind.
I want to see Lee host some sort of rites of passage for men.
I'm pretty sure she want to see it for men, but we
Cam,
can.
I believe you're referring to men. So, yeah, that's something that I would look at, but I would look at it more for young men, men of 13, 14 to maybe 18 years of age, because that's a really critical time when manhood is being developed.
Okay. Mr. Paul, I do see you back there in the waiting room. I'm gonna get to you momentarily. Mr. Lee, you come through in like 1 minute with these responses, and then let's go ahead and get to
Sure.
the next guest. Says Mr. Lee, who from your knowledge is a perfect example of men today to emulate? I found Prophet Muhammad is to be that example.
Men that are perfect. I'll be honest with you. I don't follow world leaders to that degree with regard to men of spiritual past, ancient men of prophets. There are many. Uh, if you're a reader of the Quran, definitely Muhammad would be one. There would be a pinnacle or a symbol. If you are of the Bible, then there are many within the scriptures, starting from Moses, Abraham, uh, Christ, the Apostle Paul. I would say definitely the Apostle Paul because the Apostle Paul, you have two parts of his life. You have the parts of his life when before he made the conversion to what we call Christianity today, and when he was just working for the Sanhedrin court, following their commands and punishing those who did not keep the law and bringing them in for judgment as about like a bounty hunter. And then later he became a servant of Christ. So you see him going in transition as a man. And I think he leads a good example because he lays out a standard by which not only the heavens are run by in terms of the order of things, but he also lays out a standard for men, how men should be, how they should hold themselves to a standard, and more importantly, how they interact with their families and their communities. And I think one of the things that we as men lack is a standard for ourselves because we would do anything to serve our wants, our desires, our urges without reflecting on the damage it can cause roundabout, whether it's in your family, your children, by reputation, those who are onlookers. We just do things somewhat, I don't want to say reckless, but I don't think we don't take into account consequences. So that's what I would say with regard to that. I don't know the full answer to that.
All right. I had a couple more questions, but I'll go ahead and get to at Baby Zaddy, and then we'll get to Mr. Paul. What's going on, brother? What you got for us?
What's going on, y'all? Appreciate y'all for taking time out listening to me. Got a couple questions for Mr. Lee. Well, one, appreciate y'all, man. I've been listening to you since the first King Talk, man. I kind of like dozed off and I woke up, man, and just listened to you, man, and that kept me up for like the whole night. It was really good, awesome information. I've been tuning in ever since. Great,
Thank
great,
you.
great conversation. My first question is one, the concept of self mastery. You bring up a lot of areas. Leadership, definitely one of the most important. Mastering your emotions. Can you speak a little bit more about self mastery and the areas that you should specifically focus on when it comes to self improvement, as far as developing yourself, as far as a man is concerned? Um, just a little bit of background. I think when it comes to the terms of leadership, I never really gave it a whole lot of thought. And as far as being a leader, not just just from a boss or whatever, just being a leader as far as in your family and in your community, or somebody that people look up to and respect, or something along those lines. Like, I never gave it as much thought, and as I've started to actually study it a little bit more, picked up a couple books and just read the concept of all the tenets of leadership, I realized that there was so much that I was lacking as far as development, and it goes a lot deeper into skills that you really and truly should have. So leadership is just one concept of self mastery, and then of course mastering your emotions. I mean, I mean that goes into a whole other level. So just speak a little bit on self mastery if you would, and I have another question after that once you're done.
Sure, sure. Well, I will say this. I mean, self mastery. Uh, when I was a young man, I used to read. I used to dabble in the occult sciences. I used to read books on uh, clairvoyance. I read the book The Erroneous Zones when I was about 16, 17 years old, and it was all about how to think properly. I read the Prophet Khalil Gibran when I was 15, and I was trained. I took training by a clairvoyant when I was 17, 18, and she used to work actually at the embassy of the United Nations because many leaders from around the world that we may not know of, they sit and consult with clairvoyants before many critical meetings. And she's passed on now. Her name was Stivella Concepcion, and she lived right in front of the Museum of Natural History on 78th Street or 79th Street and Columbus Avenue over there. What I would say with regard to developing mastery, I think the first thing as a man you should really learn is look up books that teach you how to think, how to organize your thoughts. Like I said, when I was 30, I studied NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and I had to do it because of a person that I was working with. He was a trainer for stockbrokers, and part of his training required me to understand how to think. One of the things of understanding how you think and how the mind works and how you are influenced by others and authority within the society, it's very important to understand how other people can influence you to do things that you don't even know that you're being influenced to do. So I think if you're from New York, I know they have what's called the Learning Annex, and the Learning Annex they used to give courses over there too, and sometimes it's free or it's very little, $25. The cost may have gone up because this was 20, 30 years ago when I took the course, but if it's still available, I would suggest doing something of that nature. But one of the things I think that most men can do before spending any money is learning to deal with your own emotions, because your emotions is how people manipulate you, particularly women. Women manipulate men through their emotions. It's like arguments. I didn't go in too much in terms of arguments, but when a woman gets into an argument with a man, it's usually never about the issue of the argument. For her, it's, can I get him to do what I want him to do? And it's some form of capitulation. But if you understand what she's doing and you have self control of your emotion, you are not going to react. You're going to act upon what's happening. And what it allows you to do is to become like you're looking at yourself in the third person, looking at yourself and looking at your spouse or girlfriend or a woman on the job, whatever it might be, and looking at this discourse going back and forth. And you're like, I see what you're doing. And now you have an option. You can ignore it. And 9 times out of 10, when you ignore a person, it triggers them to become more aggressive. Or you can respond to it. How you respond to it is most important. You can respond to it from the point of where you were triggered and you're reacting emotionally, which means you are under her control or their control because you are responding as opposed to acting. Or you can make a decisive action on how you want to deal with it. And from a man's perspective, when I talk about leadership, I'm talking about you're going to state what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. And that's the end of the conversation. There is no more argument. And that's how I handle most things. One of the things I learned very early in life that my mother used to tell me when I was a kid, she would say, your mouth is going to get you in a lot of trouble because I was deadly with my mouth when I was young. And somebody said to me, I think on last week's show, why I speak the way I speak. I choose my words very carefully because I learned at a young age in my 20s that I can say things that will just pierce people. So I double choose my words before I say them. I am direct still, but I don't deliberately say things that I know will wound. But women will say things that will wound. And if you're not in control of your emotion, when you get wounded, you will react to your wound. When you get pierced with a dart, you will say, ouch. But when it's done by someone that you're in an argument with that you care about, and you tell them something, there was a question, I think, maybe on my first series. Someone asked the question, should you tell your wife or your woman everything or a deep secret? And I said, no. I said, keep it until you die. Make a deathbed confession if you want to tell your wife or someone a deep secret. Because most women, and I'm not saying all, but most women, when they have a secret that they know that can hurt you, in an argument, they will use it. Or at some point, they will use it. And you don't want to open up yourself to be pierced. And once you're pierced, what happens? You become wounded. And then trust starts to erode because when the person that you care for the most betray you, you start to lose trust. You lose trust in the people that you love. And then if you take it to your mother and you ask your mother about it, and your mother gives you a female answer, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought you were my mom. How come you're not on my side? Trust continues to erode. So, one of the things as a man you need to first learn is the mastery over yourself. And mastering your emotions protects you from primary things, manipulations. Because the sole area of emotions, how can I say this? I've worked in sales for 30 years, and I know one thing, that a person can walk into one store and see a television or a washing machine for $1,000, and they can come to where I'm working, and that same television or washing machine is $2,000, and I can sell it to them. Why? Because I can tap into their emotions. People are moved to do things by their emotions. That's why women have more control in the society now, because very few men have mastery of their emotions, and they can be moved whichever way a woman or society or advertisement will direct you. First thing you need to learn is how to master your emotions. Second things you need to learn is to master the urges that your body will give you that you have no control over, to eat, to drink, to smoke weed or whatever your pleasure in uh, psychedelic drugs might be. Master those uncontrollables, and then you could go on to thinking, learning skills of leadership, you know, uh, do things of servitude or give of yourself, go to a YMCA or go to a chamber of commerce and donate your time there in some project. There are many ways you can learn how to serve as you become better. But the main thing I believe is to master oneself. Once you master yourself, and definitely you need a spiritual guidance. Whatever your spirituality is, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Quran, those are the two I would focus on, mostly for Black people, because I know that's where we lean for our spiritual strength. But use those two as your guidance, as a power that you have that's greater than you when you feel weak that you can lean upon. You had another question.
I did. Thank you. That was exactly what
Sure.
I needed to hear. I kind of wrote that stuff down, and you practically just expanded that much more on the little bit that I wrote. The second one was what you spoke about today when it comes to perfection. I'm in agreement definitely when it comes to striving for perfection and not settling for mediocrity. But the term that, hey, nobody's perfect. I mean, it's I can only speak for myself as far as a
Sure.
man. And matter of fact, we'll use the brother that was on before, Cliff's example. I mean,
Hmm.
Cliff said, he everything in his that he was trying to do, everything that he intended to do was all with good intention. You know what I mean? Whether he was good
Right.
at it or not, whether he was lacking in certain areas, whether he knew how to get stuff done or how he didn't get stuff done. I myself am very similar. You know what I mean? One thing that I realize is as much as we have good intentions and as much as we try to be good and perfect and decent, especially when it comes to black men, it's like, yo, people see us and they say, I like my black man like this. They have to act this way, look this way, dress this way, talk this way. And the second we go against what their idea of perfection is for what black men are supposed to be, now all of a sudden we fall into the nigga category. You know what I mean? And it happens in society. I guess it happens with our women. I mean, it happens constantly, constantly. And that feeds into a certain level of anger when people constantly tell you that you're not meeting up to their expectation. And
Okay.
I can say that, and that's kind of a personal thing for me because
Hmm.
just listening to that man's story, my story is pretty much similar. Like I've grinded, I've hustled, I've done what I needed to do. I've gotten to the point where I'm doing pretty well for myself. But all the things that it took, the sacrifice it took to get there, like nobody ever really appreciates it, especially when it goes against their idea of how perfect you're supposed to be for them. So speak
First
on
of all,
that a
I would
little bit for me, if you would,
sure.
please.
What I would say to that is, first of all, and this is why I think NLP is so powerful, because NLP teaches you how our mind is affected by the approval of others, whether it's by individuals within our family, leaders within the society, politicians, businessmen, and so forth, and by authority, governmental organizations, and society at large, judges, people that hold position that we would respect, and how NLP is neuro linguistics programming. Even the initial, I think, if you punched it in on Google, it will expand it for you. In any event, I think it's important for you to learn those skills because it inoculates you from the way other people will try to hold you to a standard, well, to criticize you when you don't meet their standard. First of all, you should never be living your life to meet someone else's standard. That's number one. I've never lived my life to meet anyone's standard. I told a story, I believe, when I first appeared on the Lapeef Network. When I was 14 years old, I grew up in Harlem, and back then, you used to meet the girls, after sundown, the girls would go upstairs, 6 o'clock, take a shower, eat dinner, come back out around 8 o'clock, all sweet smelling, powder on the chest, back in the day, shorts, sneakers, a little tank top or whatever. And that's when we, the boys, used to get a chance to sit down and talk, because play was done. But then my mom wanted me to come upstairs at 8:30. So right when the girls are coming out, I got to go home. So one particular night, there was a young lady that I liked, and I stayed out and I talked with her. I didn't get home until after 10. I had a confrontation with my mom, and she said, these are the rules of my house, blase, blase, blase. And you're either going to listen to me or so. I walked away. I went to the kitchen. I called up my uncle, my father's brother, and I said, can I come and live with you? He said, yes. He said, when? I said, now. He laughed. He said, how about Saturday? I said, cool. What time? He said, 10 o'clock. I walked back into the living room and I told my mom, I'm moving. I went into my bedroom and I started packing. Simple. From that day, my mother never treated me like a boy. When my mother was getting married at 60, she called me up and asked me all these questions and what she should do because she respected me. You have to take authority as a man, even from your mother. She should come to you. You should not go to her. By the time you are 18 years old, you should not be looking to your mother for answers. Your mother should be looking to you for answers. You are supposed to be the leader in any environment where you are. The scripture says man was given dominion, not woman. It says honor your mother and your father. Taking dominion and rulership is not dishonorable, it's your right as a man. I've never lived my life to please anyone. And I think once you stop living your life to please others, you can set a course for yourself because you have your life to live. And what your destiny is, they can't control that. They can't dictate that. And every time they tell you to go left when you want to go right, they're taking you off your path. So it's important to you for you to determine your own self-determination. And sometimes that's a lonely walk. And it could be a lonely walk right within your family. You have to tune people out. You have to learn how to ignore them. After a while, they say, you know what? You think you're too good. That's going to be the conversation next. You think you're too good. Who do you think you are? I, you just tell them, if that's the way you see me, I guess I am that good. See, one of the things you don't want to do, you don't want to. My mother was very good at manipulation. I think I've never studied psychology, but what I've learned from her, I could challenge anyone. And one of the reasons why Black women, particularly, study psychology in universities is for one purpose. Because on Kevin Samuel's show, it proves every night that it's not really a profitable career. But what's the purpose? The purpose is to control the Black man, keep you in your place. That's the purpose. So once you can overcome that, you're good to go. And one of the things I would say is, with regard to psychology, when someone tried to belittle me, I accept it. I don't run from it. Accept it. Once you neutralize the dart has no more power. There is no more poison. You react to the dart, you react to the pain, you defend yourself, they got you. It's like if you ever went fishing, once the hook is in your jaw, you let them run for a little bit, then you yank. You pull on that line, it lodge in their throat. That's it. It's only a matter of time before you get them in the boat. And that's what they do. Whether it's your mother, your sister, your wife, your girlfriend, your teacher, your boss. Manipulation is a very tactical way of control, and it's in the mind. That's why today my conversation was leadership is a state of mind. You must control yourself and you must have control. Control, when I say control your emotions and control your urges, you're not really controlling the movements of the things within your body. You're controlling your mind not to react to it when it prompts you to do so. That's all you're doing. And once the signals don't make you, then you have control over it. Then you can say, I won't act now, I will act later on my choosing. That's why I said one of the ways to learn how to control your body is to do fasting. Because fasting, after 24 hours, your body is going to start doing a whole lot of work on you, both mentally and physically. Once you get past 42 hours, it's going to be crazy. Once you get past 72 hours or up to 72 hours, that's why I would recommend most fast for most people if they have never really fast before. Gradually increase it to 72 hours. That really trains you how to master your body's involuntary impulses and urges to try to make you do things that you don't even know it's making you do in your everyday life. So, yeah. All right.
Thank you.
I
I
hope that
appreciate it.
I hope that helped.
No, it did. It did. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Appreciate you, sir.
Not a problem. Abdul, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Lee. How's everything?
I'm doing
I,
well. I'm doing well.
I caught your first two talks on Lapeef Network. I actually started listening to Lapeef Network, and then I caught your talk, and I got a lot of benefit from it. I got a lot of
Thank you.
benefit, especially when you said fasting. I myself, I became a Muslim in '91, and I started fasting. I've been fasting for over 35 years now, so I can attest to what you're saying about fasting. It curbs the passions.
Yes.
I just wanted to connect with you on some kind of level. I was working today, and then I saw that you were going to be on live. So when I got home, I tuned in.
Okay.
I had one particular question. Who was the most influential individual in your life? Not necessarily growing up, and not necessarily in your professional career, but just in general, either from the nationalistic movement, someone who influenced you the most in life.
Well, I would say I've had several people have influence in my life, men.
Mhm.
There have been quite a few. The first one would be my grandfather. My
Okay.
grandfather, my dad died when I was 7. So my grandfather really stepped in my life when I was young and raised me until I had my first, after I got out of college, had my first job before he, matter of fact, the week I got my promotion to become a systems designer, I worked for a nuclear installation company back in the 80s. The day I got my promotion, the very next day he died. And
Mhm.
so I was able to tell him I got the promotion and then he passed away. He was 94, I think, at the time when he passed away. So my granddad was the first male influence in my life that I really looked up to. And in terms of the quietness and the way I move now, I get that from him. He was a very sound minded man. He wasn't a man moved to emotional, uh, out of control gestures or anger. He went through World War One and World War Two, and he was a man of few words. But when he does speak or did speak, everyone listened. He had 10 sons, 2 daughters. One died, so I only had one aunt on my father's side. And he was a man of great power within the family. So I learned a lot of things about how to move around the females in my family and around the males in my family as well. Uh,
Mhm. Alhamdulillah.
in
I
fourth, and let me
I'm sorry.
finish.
Go ahead.
In the fourth grade, there was a teacher, white man, very tall. He was probably about 6'9", and he used to teach me how to do things correctly the first time. And my mother was the same way, but where he had patience as a teacher, my mother had very little as a teacher. She wasn't a teacher, but as a mom, she was very impatient. So my mom was a disciplinarian. So if I didn't get it right the first time, I usually got my ass beat. And when I was young, me and my brother used to say, we used to watch the TV show My Favorite Martian, and we used to think our mother was replaced and it was a Martian. We used to say that. But but when I became a man and I first went into college, I realized one thing, that I whatever was introduced to me that was new, I learned it first, and I learned it the fastest. So even though my mother didn't have patience, I learned something from it. It taught me how to learn things fast, how to learn it quicker than anybody else. If we're the first in the room as a new team, trust me, out of everybody, I'm going to be one of the first to know it by the time the introduction orientation is completed. I had a very good architectural teacher, Mr. Berensman. He was a German guy. He was an excellent teacher for me. And when I was on Wall Street, my boss, he was a black man. To me, he was a genius. And many things that he taught me about business is what I know in business. So those were men in my personal life that I interacted with that taught me a lot. I think besides that, my greatest foundational teacher and the principles of life by which I live my life would be the Bible, because I grew up with that and I studied it myself considerably, and I had many questions. And in 1982, I met the Hebrew Israelite brothers. And in 1988, I got the promotion at the same time in 1982. So I left, and when I came back 4 years later to New York, I met the brothers and I started taking tutelage under Marsha, who was the head of the school. And he was a very mild man. And he reminded me of my grandfather in the mildness in which he taught. And he was a very great influence on me and how I think, how I taught. He rose me in position to run at that time back in the early 90s, the Trooper program. And I was in charge of more than 350 young men. They were teachers of the scriptures and history and so forth. So it steadied me in thinking uh, and how to conduct myself amongst others and how to be an example onto other people. So there's no one individual. I never look to world leaders as an influence, because I think people who are in great authority are not always self-motivated. They can be moved by outside influences. So I really look at them from historical historical references as opposed to present role models. I would look at Martin Luther King and Malcolm X now, and they could become my role model from hindsight, because I have history to gain what their motivations were. Whereas people who are alive now, I don't know what their motivations are. So I don't use them as my models. I just observe.
Okay. Right. So you must be at least 15 years older than me, because even though I heard much of your story, it was similar to how I grew up. The only thing, my father, who fought in the Korean War, he had difficulty controlling his desires and urges, so he drank a lot, and so
Yeah.
he was around off and on, and eventually, my parents had divorced, but my mother
Okay.
remarried. My mother remarried. But
Okay.
are you familiar with Bart D. Ehrman?
No, I'm not.
Ehrman
From where?
Ehrman is Erhman.
Herman. No, I don't know the name.
Bar,
Is he a writer?
what he's actually a scholar of the Greek manuscripts of the Bible. When you get the opportunity, you should check him out. And also, I wanted to recommend another book for you. It's called The Sealed Nectar.
The Seal Nectar.
The Sealed Nectar. The biography of the life of Prophet Muhammad of
Okay.
Mecca.
Okay. Type it in the chat. If you could
Okay.
type it in the back chat, so I'll have it and I'll reference it I leave the show today, and I'll write it down. I appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir.
Thank you. I will. The only thing
And
sometimes is getting books here is somewhat. I'm not in the U.S. right now, so importing books takes at least 30 days. So, but I will
where,
definitely
if you
order
don't
it.
mind, if
Uh-huh.
you don't mind me asking, where are you located?
I'm in Honduras. I'm in Puerto
Okay.
Cortes. I'm
I
right on the
lived in
water. I love the water, so I'm right on the water.
I lived in Saudi Arabia teaching English for 10 years. I got back
Ah,
in 2019, my wife and I, and then the pandemic hit. and it
Okay.
just shook everything up. And now
Wow.
I'm working. Now I'm working as a machine operator for auto manufacturing.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
So I took a hit.
Well, were you getting paid more there, or are you getting paid more now?
I actually
Or it's
was
the
getting
same?
paid more in Saudi Arabia
Uh-huh.
because
The
when I
tax.
had that American passport,
Uh-huh.
went a long way. It goes a
Yeah,
long way.
it
It
does.
goes a
It
long
does.
way. Yeah. And so
It does.
I think it's the Canadians who get paid the most, and then the Americans, and then the British come after that.
After. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So I
Excellent.
taught English, and then I worked as
Plus you
a.
don't have to pay any taxes on the income you make.
It depends. If you make so much money, you have to report that. I think it's
Some of
something
it.
like, yeah, you have to report some of it. But it was a
Well,
wonderful life. I lived off the
uh-huh.
Red Sea. I lived off the
Wow.
Red Sea, and they treated us really, really good. I didn't know what to expect when I moved over there.
Right.
But Saudi Arabia is similar to America in a lot of ways, and I
Uh-huh.
learned a great deal. I learned a great deal living over there. Yeah. Me and
So,
my brother.
uh-huh.
I'm the middle child of 8 children.
Wow. So
Yeah,
you're
my
four or
parents.
five.
I'm the middle child. I'm number 4,
Okay.
and I have 4 siblings younger than me. And
Uh-huh.
my parents came into the Black nationalist movement under Malcolm.
Okay.
And I
In New
grew up
York.
actually
In New
in
York.
Detroit. I'm
In
from
Detroit.
Detroit.
Okay.
In
Okay.
Detroit, Malcolm founded Mosque Number One on Linwood in Detroit, and I went to that school from kindergarten up until about when Elijah Muhammad passed away. And that organization created so much controversy in my life. By the time Elijah died, and I came out of that and started mixing with the general public, I was so racist. I would have killed a white baby.
Well, hopefully you have
We were programmed that way. And eventually, as I got older and got married, I accepted Orthodox Islam and became a Muslim. So I knew that
okay.
that didn't work for me.
Okay, very good. Well, I think
Yeah.
one of the things that comes with age is wisdom,
Yes,
especially
sir.
men that read and study, because when I was young, I was far more hyperbolic in the way in which I talked. Like I said, I was far more sharper with my words in my youth than I am now. And I've learned to control my tongue because I know I can speak to hurt if I wanted to, but I choose not to. And some people sometimes they say, "Why do you hold back?" I hold back because it's not necessary. It's not
Very
necessary to
wise.
wound. It's not necessary to wound people if you can say it in a way in which you still communicate the effectiveness of what you're trying to say. So I
Mm,
choose that way, especially when I'm talking to my own. It's easier.
mm. That's
Yeah,
right. That's right. Prophet Muhammad used to say, he said that there's nothing that lands a man headlong into the hellfire except his mouth and his private part, his tongue and his private part.
absolutely, absolutely. And that's
Well,
why I
thank you.
talk about self-control. Don't
That's
forget to
right.
put the in the back chat. Don't forget to put the two books you mentioned.
Yeah, so actually, the first one, Bart D. Ehrman, he has a lot of YouTube videos.
Oh,
And
okay.
when I heard him, I thought he was a Muslim. And after
Uh-huh.
he studied the Greek manuscripts, he became an agnostic.
Uh-huh.
But the second book is a very popular book all over the world, and it won an award for its authenticity. And I'll put both of those in the chat.
Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate
All right.
your wisdom and your discussion. I'll be looking for you online also.
Appreciate it. Have a good one, Abdul.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Lee, you got time to answer a couple more questions that people had?
Sure, absolutely. Let's
All
go
right,
for it.
real quick. T. Rose says change is good, but consistency is key. How to balance this?
Well, consistency is really another word for discipline. Discipline is the foundation to build upon the things that you want yourself to be rooted in. So, change is change is the one constant in life besides birth and death. Life will always have things that change, but your discipline will help you to adapt to the changes when they occur. And if you're not afraid of change, it makes it easier because most times changes will improve your life. In very rare times, it won't. But when it doesn't, then it's about you, digging deep and working to overcome it because it's a challenge to help you to grow and to become better. So change is a constant and consistency is discipline. So just practice your discipline to be rooted in the things that you want to be uh, good at and be good in or be known for.
All right. Another question is from Will Simp says, "What's your take on political prisoners?"
My take on political prisoners. Well, it depends on why they were imprisoned and what they did. Uh, if they are liberators fighting for the freedom of their country or for their countrymen, I think at some point they should be freed. I don't think a political prisoner, especially if he has not killed many, sometimes killing is necessary when you're fighting. So I would each one would have to be evaluated on its own premise. But uh, in general, I think once a man hit a certain age, if he's not a danger to society, whether he's a political prisoner or not, he should be freed. He should be freed to die a life free in the world. He was born free in the world. He should die free in the world.
Okay. And then this last question is, why is men talking about their problems considered weak by women and by other men?
Well, with regard to being weak by other men, I think you would have to judge the reason why the men would think it's weak, or you would have to evaluate who is the man that's making the criticism. What is his critique? Is it to challenge you? Is it to help you reflect better? Is he a man that is known to be self-critical, or is he trying to subject you into some order? I think with regard to women, and I think what's most men don't understand with women is that from the scriptures, women have always sought power. They've always sought power. And there have been times in society where they had gained power. And there are times when they were priestesses and they were goddesses. Those things are not reflected in depth in the scriptures, but they are touched upon when they talk about Semiramis, when they talk about Ashtaroth, when they talk about Isis. There were a time in the world where women ruled before, where women had power on the earth. And when men came into power under what we read about in scripture, there were small references made to it, but it was stomped out. And today, women are rising to power again. One of the things with regard to when women criticize men for being weak, it's because it's one way to affect your ego. If the woman who is considered a weaker vessel can make you appear to be weaker than her, or at least make you self criticize yourself to believe you're weaker than her, then it destabilizes who you are as a person. There's nothing wrong with being weak at times. You can't be strong all the time. The only way you build up strength is to recognize where your weaknesses are. If someone points out your weakness and upon evaluation, you realize it is a weakness, then you must work on it to develop yourself. If just to talk about your pain and your suffering, others will say you're weak for doing it, then you must know that that is a manipulation tactic. And if it's a manipulation tactic, you should give it no power. Ignore it, simply. If you ignore it, it has no power over you. If it has no power over you, they have to go back to the drawing board and come up with something else. But until then, you move forward.
All right. Well, Lee, I think it's been a great
Yes.
show. You got any final
Wow.
words?
Any final words? Well, what I would say is that as black men, we are probably the least expected men to achieve anything in the United States, and definitely not in the world at large. Underestimation is a very powerful position to be in. I use it all the time in my life. Being a shorter stature man, many have underestimated me because of my height. Being a financially stable man, once upon a time, many have underestimated me then of what I could accomplish and what I can do and what I have done. So, as black men, we find ourselves in a position where we are the underdog and we are underestimated. That puts us in a power position because whatever we do, no one is looking for it to amount to anything. This is why in the past 40 years, so many black men have moved into the middle class and have accomplished a transformation from being seen as drug addicts and drug dealers to now developing a middle class and a business class. And it has caught many flat footed off guard. I think if we utilize the next decade or two to continue to build and develop ourselves, we can reach a point of position and power that very few would anticipate because they're not looking our way. The women aren't looking our way. Some black men are not looking at other black men to achieve. And the people who are in position of power don't really regard us because they have laid so many traps that they don't believe that we will overcome them or surmount them. Particularly the trap of, especially, child support to keep you weak economically and financially, to keep your children away from you, which is a pain that most men suffer with, and to their woman to keep your woman away from you at odds. That is a battle that you're constantly fighting. So overcoming these obstacles is going to be a trial for many of us, but many of us will overcome them. And when we do, what's going to be the next plan? What's the next step? And for me, what I say is to build a foundation of unity among black men. If we can start there, we become a force to be reckoned with. When no one can cause us to want to hurt one another, to want to take one another out, when we can look at another brother and see value in that man and that he deserved to live. Obviously, if he hasn't done something that is worthy of punishment, that's a different story. But just because he said something you didn't like, or just because he's wearing something that's nicer than yours, or he steps on your toe, or he bumps your shoulder, or he's talking to your woman. If he's talking to your woman and your woman is above a 15-year-old or a minor, she should be at the age where she can speak for herself. If she has a man, she can say, I got a man. Thank you very much. If your woman engaged the conversation, then you need to evaluate. Your woman is playing you, and don't be played by your woman. Dump her and move on. Simple. Don't allow yourself to be manipulated and learn to build a foundation of unity from one black man to the next. And that's what I would say. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in to Lapeef, the Sag Talk, for giving me the audience and the time to express some of my thoughts and ideas. I look forward to talking to you guys in the future. I don't know what will be next, but whatever that will be, I'm sure you guys uh, will find it entertaining and informational and valuable. Have a good day. Thank you guys a lot.